Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
Girl, real talk. This whole "it's a new year, time to reinvent myself" trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
Literally the day after I talked to you guys, the vehicle that we have that's registered to me was pulled over, and one of the first things that was asked was where I was. That really caught us off guard. Until people realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, they're not going to talk.
This person could have just been bullshitting with me. I don't know why someone would want to bullshit like this unless they were just really messed up in the head. But she said if they didn't give her some drugs or some money, she was going to tell on them. And they were like, "No, we're not giving you any drugs." And so she said, "Okay, well, I'm going to tell them." So she grabbed her phone and she called 911.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
First off, we want to thank everyone who is listening and supporting the cause to find out what happened to Molly and Colt. We also appreciate all the amazing reviews that everyone has been posting. Those reviews really help us get the word out about this case, so please keep them coming.
Today we're going to talk to Colt's cousin, Nicole, again. It's been a few weeks since she spoke out publicly for the first time about Colt and Molly.
Like Paula, we admire her courage to speak truth to power and her commitment to be an advocate for her cousin Colt.
We do know now that this investigation is climbing out of its cold case status, and that's because of everyone who's listening, sharing, giving tips, which is amazing because after 9 years, it's time for this to end.
So let's talk to Nicole.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing all right.
We're doing good. So we wanted to check in with you and see how things are going since you were on the podcast. And I know you had some thoughts about last week. I just kind of want to catch up with you.
Yeah, sounds good. I just said that things have been kind of interesting. Literally the day after I talked to you guys, the vehicle that we have that's registered to me was pulled over, and one of the first things that was asked was where I was. That really caught us off guard because I was at work and my husband had gone and gotten his wallet that he left at a local store. He had a seatbelt on, but the OHP officer said that he pulled him over for no seatbelt, which was odd because I watched my husband unbuckle his seatbelt to step out of the car. It was just really weird.
You think it had something to do with the podcast?
The irony and that it was literally the day after, it really shook me. I've gotten to where I don't drive on the main roads anymore, again, because it just was too coincidental for me. Had the podcast not aired the day before, I wouldn't have really thought anything of it. But me and my coworkers stood at the front of the building, watched the whole encounter. When I finally approached my husband, he was like, that was so weird. He said he got to the window and looked in the car and said, "Where's Amber?" And I just looked at him and he said, "Do we know you?" To the officer, because he was like trying to think maybe it was somebody that knew me or knew us. And he's like, "I've never seen the guy before." And I was so far away that I couldn't see his face. I just stood there because I wasn't sure what was happening. And around here, you don't approach officers when they're out on stops. You just don't do that. So we just stayed away. But, when my husband and I talked about it later, it was just really weird. And then there was on the ticket that he gave my husband for no seatbelt, there was a date on there. And so my husband goes to the courthouse. We go to the courthouse on that date, and they tell him that it wasn't a court date and that they can't really find the ticket. And he was like, "What? We're still going to pay it because we don't want a warrant being issued for him." But was like 45 minutes of them trying to find this ticket in their system. I don't know. It was just really weird. The whole thing was just really, really, really weird.
Hopefully it's just a coincidence. I think it's the only thing that I think it's kind of strange is that he asked for you. The only thing I can think of is he ran your plates and it was registered under you. And so
right. And which it is.
Yeah, I think that's probably why he said, well, your husband's obviously not you. And so he was probably saying, where's Amber? So they always run the plates before they come up to the car to see if if it's a stolen.
Well, I mean, it's just weird because like on the title, it's got my name first and then my husband's name. So both of our names are on the vehicle. And it was just weird. It was just, the whole thing was just really odd.
Yeah.
And even my husband was weirded out about it. He was like, what the hell was that? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a coincidence because the OHP, if any of the law enforcement agencies that have been pretty decent on this case, they've been one of them. So I would say if it was any of the other locals, like, Carter County or Love County or anything like that, that would be really weird. Tell us a little bit about any kind of feedback have you been giving back, and if anybody's been calling you, because a lot of times, when we're out, there's like tips that come out and it kind of jars people's memories and stuff like that. Has anything like that's happened?
A little bit. So I've talked to a few more family members that don't really want to come forward. They were very proud of me for speaking up. And that was awesome because I was really nervous about how the family was going to feel about some things that I said and my opinions on things, because none of us have really talked about it. We've all just kind of stayed quiet about it. And that's really unfortunate that it's taken this long for us to all decide that, now's the time to start voicing how we're feeling about things. I keep telling them that their opinion matters just as much as mine does. Maybe they have some kind of weird theory that hasn't been thought of that could help, but nobody wants to really get involved. And it's really unfortunate because people are still scared. Until people realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, they're not going to talk. I had one cousin say, I've worked entirely too hard and I have entirely too much to lose. And I was just like, Colt lost his life. Seriously? That side of the family wasn't really as close with them. But still, I was just like, but Colt lost his life. And it's been 10 years, almost 10 years. I really think that it's bugging me more this year because my son will be 21 at the end of October. It's really shaking me as a mom that we don't know what happened. And it's really, really unfortunate that people are still so scared because there are people higher up that are just protecting things. And then the podcast that came out this last weekend, that was a roller coaster of emotions. I was so frustrated because the minute that he said, I haven't even listened to all of it, but immediately starts trying to dismiss the people that are coming forward because they're druggies. People get clean and people change. So for them to still have the same stories years later, very consistent, says something. And for him to be like, I picked Craig Ladd and he's such a good guy and da-da-da. When was the last time you talked to him? Because he's on the Brady list. You don't get on the Brady list by being a good guy. It's just frustrating because he hasn't even really looked into anything. He's just automatically trying to shut everything down and be dismissive. And that's not okay. If he wants to help, perfect. Great. Voice your opinion after you've listened to everything, after you've gone through everything. You can't just immediately jump in and say, nope, you called the person that I picked a bad guy. Nope. Because we all have had run-ins with Craig Ladd. And he hasn't been in the area to know who has gone rogue and who has tried to stay in the good path. And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, well, let me just stop you real quick. I mean, I've been talking to Gary quite often after his, and, we've sent him a lot of information on the case and stuff like that. And he's looking at it from a legal perspective. And granted, he hasn't been living in that area for a long time. And granted that he does still occasionally talk to Craig Ladd, but I'm sure it's not about cases. It's not about anything. It's just catching up. And so there's a lot of disconnect there. He had listened to most of the podcast. He was almost all the way caught up. But, he's looking at it from a legal standpoint. He's had to deal with these cases time and time again. So I think a lot of times because I've had discussions with him about this, as far as you say that you wouldn't consider what a druggie says in an eyewitness. And I've said, you're not going to get a church-going person who is honest.
Doesn't mean because they're on drugs doesn't mean they don't go to church. But
no, what I'm just saying is...
I understand. But it's also that because he's just making a judgment, this blanket judgment statement, like you're saying, Amber, people do change. People do get clean. Again, I'm going to say this, that the person that gave us this information, the informant that was on episode 11, he had no reason to tell Paula and Misty this information. He doesn't gain anything by it. In fact, it actually made his life worse by saying something. And I don't feel that someone would put themselves in the middle of this for no reason. Okay.
Exactly.
So to me, it's a little ridiculous to say that we're just going to dismiss that statement from him. And also, I mean, I want people to understand a little bit more about Craig Ladd being on the Brady list. So what do you know about that, Amber?
I don't know a lot about that. I know that it has been brought up in numerous conversations. Normally, if somebody's talking about Craig Ladd, there is somebody around that's going to mention that we don't understand why he's still DA because people are going out and voting, but nothing's changing. And I don't know. I don't do politics.
That's okay. We'll look into that.
I personally wonder what he did that put him on that list. I haven't had a chance to look into it. This is my busy season. I'm very curious as to what did he do that he finally got caught up on that put him on that list? And what does it take for somebody on that list to be disbarred? Because I haven't heard of anybody running against Craig Ladd ever. That goes kind of back to what I have said before about nothing's going to change if nothing changes. And until we can get the people that aren't really doing what they need to be doing out of where they're at, nothing's going to get any better.
No, I agree. And I don't know the politics down there either, but from what I've told is a lot of times he's running unopposed.
That's how these people get in their office and stay there for so long. And then they're there so long that they know unopposed, that they know that they can do whatever they want. And that's literally what happens. It's almost like a movie. Some of the things that happens down here, everything gets real hush hush. Then it becomes a taboo thing to talk about. And I'm like, these are 2 missing kids. There's nothing taboo about that. That's just wrong. Everything needs to stop. We need to have answers so that we can move on. Poor Paula, she's never going to be able to move on until she at least has some sort of answer or has something that she can bring home. And I hate to say it that way, but I mean, at this point, we may never get, we're never going to get full skeletal remains, if any skeletal remains, but something would be better than nothing. And the dwelling on every day of not knowing is, I can only imagine how hurtful that is, being as close to Molly as she was. Because unfortunately, I wasn't that close to Colt as we got older, but I know that it still bothers me tremendous. So I can only imagine what Molly's family has gone through. And I know that I've talked to Colt's sister, and she's told me she's not dealing well with it. And there's a lot more going on behind the scenes as far as these families go that nobody really takes into consideration. Because if it was one of Craig Ladd's kids that was missing, none of this would have gone on this long. They would have been found, and anybody who had any nose itch of what might have gone on would have been incarcerated. And it would have been over very quickly.
100%.
It's because these kids were doing what kids do, and, they ran off. No, they didn't. They would have contacted somebody by now. Somebody would have seen them somewhere. Like, they didn't have the money to just take off to another continent or anything like that. So where did they go? They didn't have any money.
Well, we know that Molly called one of her friends the following morning. So we know that she didn't run off.
Right.
And her phone pinged right around that area. That right there, we know.
Right.
It's just unfortunate. The whole thing is just unfortunate. And I think, getting back to what you were saying about Gary, I think he doesn't really, because there was another person that came out that's close to the case that's heard that as well and said, listen, he may have been a great guy when he hired him, but he's a different person now. And so,
right.
and I think that's...
that goes back to people change.
Yeah.
And you can't be one-sided and blind to see that. If he really wants to know what's going on down here, he can meet a few people at Ardmore Coffee Shop, or he could just go to the Ardmore Main Street Coffee Shop and sit there and ask people as they walk in the door what they think of Craig Ladd, and he's not going to hear what he wants to hear. And that's just random people on the street. And that says a lot, because it's not just us that are close to this case or have anything to do with this case. It's other people. It's everyday people that just know that he's been corrupt for a while, and money talks. If you don't have the money to get what you want, then you're at his mercy on how he feels that day. And it's not okay either, because that's playing with people's lives, and that's a God complex, and that's definitely not okay.
I don't know about the money exchanging hands or anything like that for case, but what we have been told about Craig Ladd is that unless it has some sort of high profile nature that he can use to kind of make himself look better, and if it's not a slam dunk case, he doesn't kind of pursue it. That's what we've been told.
Well, I mean, also that goes back to him not going after people that need to be gone after because they are, quote unquote, higher members of society, because they paid their way out of that. That's what I was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that have happened around here that people should have been very much prosecuted on, and they just, like Joe, walked away with a slap on the hand. But it's not that they had anything to offer other than money. I don't know. I try to stay out of all of that. I try to stay low.
Yeah, well, it's small small town politics, and it mirrors big town politics too, because to a certain degree that a lot of that happens just, looking the other way for some people that might have more influence in society and the community and stuff like that. So
I think that whole podcast though felt to me like he had blinders on. It would break his heart if he knew that Ann Nib knew what happened out there. Well, I've got news for him. Like, I'm sure Paula could provide him with screenshots of when they jumped on Operation Find Molly Miller, and she was talking all the trash that she was talking herself from her Facebook. And I know Paula's got those screenshots, because if she doesn't, I know somebody else does. I don't have them, but I know somebody took screenshots of all of that, because we've talked about it before. It's been talked about in that group before. And I think that, honestly, he needs to join Operation Find Molly Miller so that he can see what's really going on down here, because there are a lot of things that get shared in that group. That group is a great source of information.
I think he has. I think he's been on our discussion boards, and he's been perusing stuff. He has come late to the party on this one, so he's catching up.
Right.
And I'm just I'm not defending him, but I've had a 3-hour conversation with Gary. And if you remember what I asked him at the end of the podcast last week, I go, what would you do if Molly was your daughter? And you heard his response.
Right.
He said he'd be out there on the land. He'd be not be following the rules or the law. He would do it whatever he possibly could to move his case forward, whatever it took. And I said, that's exactly what Paula's doing.
And that is exactly what Paula is doing. But he also doesn't realize that this is a family of very seasoned gunsmen and things like, they're tweakers. They are tweakers out there on that property. And anybody with any kind of common sense knows that you're not just going to try to go out there and look around, especially without a warrant, because they're going to shoot you. There's no trespassing signs everywhere. And it's common knowledge that if you're not in their circle, you're not welcome. That's the whole reason, I think, why there hasn't been more foot searches out there. Paula has, I know, been searching every area that she has had access to search. But she also knows that even being out there looking around puts a target on her. We don't want another life lost. That's not the outcome that we want. I wish it was just as easy as go out there and look around, because I can guarantee you we would have already been out there looking around. But when you get a laser beam pointed between your eyeballs, you don't see anybody, but you know what it is, and you start panicking. That's a you're not welcome without saying it. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. That's why we're pushing so hard for the warrant, for the warrant thing to happen. Because then legally they can go out there and they can have officers for protection. But what are they going to do? Go to Love County and say, hey guys, we want to go do a foot search. You guys want to come with us? That's not ever going to happen. So many reasons.
Obviously, Love County is kind of taken out of this ballpark right now, and OSBI is leading the investigation right now. And I believe there are going to be efforts to kind of search that property again. I think that's going to happen. But it's been so long. That's the problem. And they've had opportunities to. Gary last week says he doesn't think they have moved the bodies or anything. I mean, I don't think you can say unequivocally that couldn't have happened. They've had a lot of time.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to him not really knowing these people anymore. The sheriff was having his son sell meth out of his pickup, so I guarantee he could load something in the back of his truck and throw a tarp over it, and nobody's going to question him. There was just a lot in that podcast that was really frustrating, because I understand wanting to see the good in people, but the information and what we know it's not so cut and dry. If it was so cut and dry, it would already have been over with. And yeah, it is probably something simple, but until we can get a warrant or some sort of legal okay to go out there and do what we need to do, then we're all at a standstill. And that's what's frustrating, is that Paula's calling and emailing and doing everything she can to try to figure out what's going on, why this warrant hasn't been approved. What more information do they need? Because tell Paula what they need and she'll have it to them within 24 hours. I guarantee you.
We do know why the warrant it just wasn't written properly. So it was a technicality. So that can be resubmitted. So that that is either in the works or possibly in the works. We don't know, but we know it was a technicality. So, and unfortunately, that's the law. Just like when you went to see if there was a ticket and they couldn't find that, and the bureaucracy takes over, it's imperfect. And I think that's what Gary was trying to explain. He's looking at it from years and years of legal stuff that he's accumulated. And a lot of the times he's kind of like the umpire. He's calling balls and strikes. He calls it a ball, and you're going to be upset with him because you're like, hey, this was a strike. But at the same point, it's their judgment based upon what they know about the law. And I think the good news about him is that he is trying to help. He's coming from that place, because we've had those discussions and you'll hear those later on. And he is genuinely trying to help from a legal perspective. And that's valuable, because anything that we have, that we find, needs to be able to used for prosecution. If it's not properly found and preserved, or a witness statement is not done properly, it doesn't make a difference if we say, oh yeah, we know they did it, but if we can't put them away, it's kind of like all for naught.
Right.
I value his expertise, but I agree with you. I think he's out of touch of what the community down there is like. And I don't think, he talks to these people, and I asked him, I go, you still talk to Craig Ladd? And he goes, yeah, we chat on Facebook every once in a while. So I don't think there's any in-depth conversations about this case or what the culture is like down there and stuff like that, because I don't think it just happens. So that's I agree with you that if he came down there and sat in that coffee shop, he'd have a totally different perspective. But there's a reason why he left that area.
Anybody who has the means to get out of here gets out of here. Unfortunately, I've tried to leave this area numerous times, and my dad would get really sick every single time that I left. He used to joke with me that I would break his heart when I would move off, and literally he would have a heart attack. Kind of a very morbid joke. He tried to make the light of the bad things, but he would always joke with me about, me moving off and it breaking his heart. And so I've stayed. This last time that I came back, I've stayed in the area. It's just, this area is just toxic. The whole area is toxic. I've had to unfollow one of the local scanner pages because I like to be in the know. I like to know what's going on around me and stuff, but the amount of drugs and shootings that are happening here is almost like living in Chicago. Ardmore's been known as Little Chicago for many, many years, and it's just getting worse.
That's sad. That's sad, because it's a very small community. It's not that many people.
Ardmore's downtown has so much potential, and they try really, really hard to bring in new businesses and stuff.
But what I want to talk to you about, and what we want to kind of circle back here with, is that you talked about when you talked to your relatives and some of the other people that you spoke to after the podcast, and you said they're all still afraid. I really want to find out what that is. What are they afraid of still?
I think it's just, it kind of circles back to Craig Ladd. Some of these people are in Carter County, so he would be the prosecuting attorney for anything. And like my husband getting pulled over, like we immediately panicked because we don't want any more problems. But when you start talking about things and you start poking the hornet's nest, you're eventually going to get stung. They don't want to risk it. So they just aren't even saying anything. It's really sad. It's really, really sad because they're afraid of the repercussions from anybody higher up. People can say Joe Russell's crooked all day long, but you're still going to have those other people that are still friends with him and that are still on his side because, oh, well, he just made a mistake. But why is it okay for Joe Russell to make a mistake? But if anybody else makes a mistake, they're just damned. That's it.
I made that comment as well because based upon, and you expressed it pretty well, and last time we spoke, someone can just get busted for not having a medical marijuana card and go to state prison. But here you have Joe who was operating a meth house out of his house and letting his son transport, regardless, even if he wasn't done, because that's basically what they say. Well, there wasn't enough to convict him on all that stuff. And the people that were giving those testimonies, their arguments were shredded because they can shred them because they do drugs and they're unreliable.
Reliable enough for them to be called into the court.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, reliable enough for the FBI. The FBI is one that brought the case against him. So they obviously thought that he was reliable. So, but there's a lot of liability here. Even if he didn't make any sort of backdoor deal or diminished his sentence to a misdemeanor because these people were not reliable witnesses, it's still, he's getting treated differently.
He really is. And everybody can see that. And then that infuriates people even more. Because any one of us would have pulled some crap like that, we would be gone. We would be in a federal penitentiary somewhere, and that would be it. But somebody said that they had made the comment that he had had a stroke or something, and they had taken that into consideration. And I'm like, okay, and he's fine now. He lost a lot of weight. Heard that his health was better than it had been in a long time. What does that have to do with anything? His age and health shouldn't have been a factor in any of it because he felt fine when he was letting it happen. I don't know. The whole thing is just really frustrating to see from both sides of being in the law enforcement how I was inside of it and seeing having to take people to court and seeing how things went from the legal standpoint to also being on the other side of that and then seeing that anybody with any common sense looks at Joe's case and goes, what the hell? Because that's not fair. That's not how things work. What did he give them to make them let him go? Because it wasn't Colt and Molly.
Apparently, from what we've been told, is that he didn't give them anything and that it was just because of the witnesses were not reputable, upstanding citizens and that their testimony...
Yeah, I don't buy that.
I kind of don't either. So it's confusing. Because like I said, I don't think the FBI and the federal government would have even approached this case if they didn't feel like that they had it. And maybe their goal was just to get Joe out. They said, listen, we may not have enough to convict him, but it's enough to force him out of his job. And so I think that's what...
And we applaud them for that. But still, unfortunately, not much has changed. Marty Grisham passing kind of set everything back. And I say that with my whole chest. It's real convenient that pieces of evidence are all of a sudden missing or thrown away or what have you. That's really unfortunate, but it doesn't make sense as to why. Why was evidence being kept at someone's house? That's not how that worked. And if he didn't feel that it was safe at the sheriff's department, why wasn't the FBI reached out to and said, or the OSBI or whoever, and given that evidence? Why was it taken home in a brown paper bag?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me. That's not how things work. And I've known Jim Diggs for a very, very long time. Love the man. I worked with him. He worked with my Uncle Frank. He's a great guy. There's just some things that just don't make sense. And that's really hard for me because those questions are never going to get answered. It's just as simple of, oh, it got thrown out. But those of us who know a little bit more as to that shouldn't have even been at your house, my guy, he's never going to answer as to why other than he didn't feel it was safe at the sheriff's department. Okay, then why wasn't it ever turned over?
He meant well. I really do. Everything that everyone's told us about him, he's a sweet man and he meant well. But he also was there during the whole Joe reign. So it's kind of confusing. I mean, I know he's tried to help. I mean, Paula loves him. He's been helping her. He's been helping the other long time.
I have nothing against him. I just really wonder why he didn't ever just take this the initiative himself to go and turn that evidence over to a different department.
He may have tried. And I think what we were told is that he presented it to Marty, and I don't think Marty wanted it. So he didn't think it was relevant. So that's why he kept it. And I think that was smart that he did. Unfortunately, it got misplaced over time because we're talking like 9 years here. We're talking almost 10 years here. When you have stuff, very rare that people have the presence of mind to keep something that long that has really nothing to do with them, but may come up later.
No, I agree with that completely. It just, I don't know.
And people's lives change.
Instead of going to Marty, I would have gone straight to the OSBI with it. And I would have been like, you know what? Here you go. It's now your problem.
Yeah. I know, but it's hindsight 2020. Because a lot of times the OSBI they didn't want some of this stuff as well. They didn't feel it was relevant.
And that doesn't make sense either. Like, I have been sharing you guys' podcast and story, the Colt and Molly stuff. I've been sharing it everywhere that I can because the internet sleuths these days, man, they're solving stuff left and right. You've got these people coming forward, everyday Joes wanting to help that are finding evidence in the bottom of lake. I've been sharing it everywhere. And Paula's probably going to see an influx of people in the group again. But that's why I do it, that's my contribution. I listen to other podcasts and things on YouTube as well, and I share it there a lot. I'll toss it in the comment section every chance I get because maybe somebody can help that isn't from here, because that's what we're going to need is outside help.
I agree with you, and I think that's important. The important thing is this thing stays in the public eye, and I think that's the more it's in the public eye, the more people really understood, and I think that was really, and Cindy, I think you agree here, is that the more that it was in the public eye and the more people, that's when we're getting tips, that's when people feeling comfortable talking. Exactly, because it happens in waves. There'll be a whole lot of influx of people interested, and then it kind of dies down.
And that's what's really important here is to keep this in the limelight for everyone to understand that we're not going away. Paula's not going away. No one's going away until we solve this case. I don't really believe the fact that everything that Gary was saying about the legalities of this case, that's the only way to get a prosecution. I disagree with him. There's been plenty of cases that we've been involved in that we've seen happen where people get prosecuted with very little evidence, very little physical evidence. And I don't believe that the amount of circumstantial evidence that we have in this case does not warrant a possible prosecution, some avenue to take here. I'm not going to just say, oh, well, they're druggies, their testimony doesn't matter, throw it out the window. It mattered for the grand jury. It mattered for the FBI. It matters.
Right.
It matters.
And it does matter. Again, people change. If that was the case of them just being able to dismiss everybody because of their past, there's a lot of cases that would have never had any sort of resolution, and that's what's frustrating.
Isn't that what's happened with this case, though? They labeled Molly and Colt druggies from day one. And ever since then, they've never really put the efforts or the manpower behind finding them because they were labeled druggies. And that's a big problem in this country. And that is one of the things I'm going to keep yelling about forever, because it doesn't matter if someone is on drugs or if someone has problems and they don't fit the picture perfect person of a missing person. Doesn't mean that they deserve any less attention. And it doesn't mean that they deserve to not be found. And I think it's disgraceful that because, let's not forget, Molly was 17-year-old child. She was a child. Right. She wasn't even an adult yet. And everybody's just brushing this under the carpet. How do these people live and sleep? How do they sleep at night?
Exactly.
And the thing is this, if Craig Ladd has nothing to hide and has no interest in helping this case, then why doesn't he just say it? Come out and say it. Just say, you know what? I'm not going to do anything for this case. Just put it out there. But at this point, he already looks bad. He already looks bad.
He wears these rose-colored glasses that everybody loves him. And he's got, unfortunately, like Gary, is also wearing those same rose-colored glasses, that he's just a great guy. You know what? I really wish that the Craig Ladd that he hired was the Craig Ladd that was in charge of this case. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if it was the same Craig Ladd, why hasn't anything been done? It's really, really unfortunate. It's really frustrating.
They had an opportunity if they would have proved that search warrant. That would have shown a sign that they're willing to kind of go the extra mile. because there was a lot of discussion about that search warrant. And from what I was told is when they get presented a search warrant, they're not supposed to ask anybody's advice or anything like that. But there was a lot of debate over it. And they asked Marty, they go, what do you think? You go, the county could get sued. And Marty's like going, go ahead, do it, sign it. This needs to get done. We were told that the OSBI was consulted and other people were consulted and stuff like that. And that, according to what Gary told us, if they do that, they have to make it public record that they did that. And they didn't. That's problematic right there. And that would have been a sign, an olive branch towards this investigation if said to go search that property. Now, since then, there's other things moving in the background that we can't talk about right now that hopefully will come to fruition soon that will help this case. I will tell you that there is a lot of groundswell of effort since the podcast is launched to get this thing done. So
I'm loving that, because Cindy, going back to what you were saying about it doesn't matter the life choices that they were making, I agree with that wholeheartedly, because the young lady that was missing in California was 16 years old. Her mother admitted that she knew she was drinking and at a party where there was drug use. And the masses have come together to find this young lady and find out what happened to her. And I applaud that. And I have piggybacked that as much as I can. Like I said, I'm throwing links as hard as I can on anything that has to do with that young lady. Because if she was important enough to be found, so are Molly and Colt.
You know who found her? It was with Ventures with Purpose.
And that's why I'm throwing these links to the public. And I don't care. I don't care who comes and helps. Come help us bring them home. We have some sort of closure. That's all we want. That is all we want. We all have the same end goal.
Girl, real talk. This whole it's new year, time to reinvent myself trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
On every project like this that Cindy and I work on, we always preach the same words.
You first have to go back to the beginning, and that's what we're going to do on this next segment.
Almost 1 month after the high-speed chase and Molly and Colt went missing, Paula and her family received one of their first tips of what possibly happened to Molly and Colt.
This tip set the stage for Paula and her family's suspicions, which ultimately made them take the investigation into their own hands.
The recording you're about to hear is what we believe is probably one of the purest tips that we've heard to date, due to the fact that it was received just weeks after their disappearance.
We've disguised the tipster's voice and withheld their name to protect their identity.
We've been out there searching anyway. We started searching over in wherever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think they're on Pond or Colby's land or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I think and the thing is, I don't know the general specific area.
Right.
I just think, and this could be wrong. This person could have just been bullshitting with me. I don't know why someone would want to bullshit like this unless they were just really messed up in the head. Okay, well, I'll have to send you a picture of the general area I'm talking about, but Wade Road, and then you turn. I mean, I've never been down there, but on the map it looks like you turn left or right, and you hit Stockton. So it's somewhere around Wade and Boston. There's what I was told is there's little old wells around there. I don't know if I guess they're water wells. He says they're really deep, but and they don't stick up off the ground. They're ground level. That's why they'll be hard to eat, because if leaves or anything are pushed over them or whatever, they're going to be really hard to see. So you'll have to take a rake or a broom and just go over everywhere, because they're going to be hard to see. But anyway, they're old wells, they're ground level, they don't stick up off the ground, like, at all. I was told that the story is, I know y'all want justice for Molly and everything, but the thing is that if what I was told is right, there's no way they can link Con and Nick and Colby to it, and, like, besides people saying, well, we heard this, because the way they killed them, like, there's not going to be any evidence. Like, there's no way to link it. So just, like, telling the police their names, like, I'm not really sure, but I feel like I'm probably one of only, like, 5 people or so who know about this, if this is right. Well, they did it because then they're going to say, well, who knows? And then I'm not sure if they know that I know, but they could. But anyway, okay, so this is what happened. And I don't know if this was a day after the wreck or, like, before or after, like, I don't know. That's what he didn't tell me. Molly knew too much about something. I don't know what it was. It was something that Con and Colby and them had going on. Like, maybe it was a drug deal or, like, I don't know. But she knew too much about something, and she threatened to call the police. It's like, I'm kind of seeing her joking around about this.
Right.
But then again, like, she could have been being real serious and scared them or whatever.
Right.
But she said, if they didn't give her, like, some drugs or some money, she was going to tell on them. And they were like, no, we're not giving you any drugs. And so she said, okay, well, I'm going to tell them. So she grabbed her phone and she called 911. And then I guess they freaked out and they grabbed her phone or something. I, like, really don't know how long after this. Like, it could have been the next day or it could have been right after. They didn't tell me, and I don't want to ask anymore.
Right.
But so I don't know if it was right after she made this, like, 911 phone call, or if it was the next day or the next day or whatever. But I guess they told her they would give her drugs. And then, so she said, okay. And then they went and filled up the needle or whatever, however they do drugs like that. And they put, like, way too much dope in it on purpose because they were like, well, she's, like, a little 16-year-old girl or however old she is, and she can't keep her mouth shut and she's going to tell on us or whatever, so we got to kill her. So they put way too much drugs in the needle on purpose, but they didn't tell her that. And they said, okay, they said, we'll do it for you or whatever. So they shot her up with, like, way too much on purpose. And the way he explained it, he said, and it blew her heart up. But I don't know how it happens when you overdose. But anyway, she overdosed, and they did it on purpose. Then they realized they couldn't leave Colt alive because they knew that the cops would be asking him about Molly all the time and everything, and he would end up telling or whatever. So they shot him, and then again, like, I don't know how long it was after they killed them that they went to the bodies, but they took the bodies out. My understanding is they took the bodies out. They hadn't done anything to the bodies yet. They were just dead, you know. They took the bodies out around, like, Wade or Stockton somewhere and dumped them in a well. I don't know if it was 2 different wells or the same well. Dumped them in a well and then poured acid over their like caustic soda over their bodies. And I read online, and they used to use caustic soda to decompose roadkill, and then also, like, farm animals. Like, I guess when they were dead, so they really know why, but they use it for farm animals and roadkill is what I read online. And all that's going to be left is bone holes. I don't know if that means bones or bone shells or what, but all I know is that if what I was told is right, they're in a well somewhere, and it's going to be really hard to find them because I'm sure that they probably, like, kick dirt and stuff into the well and, like, back into the well. And
are these wells, like, open?
Do what?
Are these wells open? Do they have a lid that covers them?
I don't know, but I don't know. See, that's what I was thinking, like, would it have a lid? Because they wouldn't want somebody just, like, stepping into a hole or whatever. So I would think, yeah, it would have a lid, but if they're old and then they're already covered in dirt or whatever, then they probably wouldn't need a lid.
Right.
But, like, yeah, I would think probably, yeah, they probably have a lid, and that's fine. I mean, they would have to, or somebody would step in it, you know? Or somebody could step in it.
And you can send me a picture of kind of the vicinity?
Yeah. And like I said, like, I mean, I wouldn't send you on a wild goose chase unless I really thought this is really what happened. Because I've heard from two other people that, like, I don't know if these people knew, like, what happened, but all they told me was, well, all I can tell you is they're never going to find the body. That's all they said. And, like, this would make sense because, seriously, like, even if somebody found the well, got a flashlight or whatever, it's probably still going to be pretty hard to see them, like, if there's nothing left of the bodies. And then, two, if they push dirt or stuff in there, then that's going to cover the bones and stuff, and, like, you're just not going to see it, and nobody's ever going to think anything. It's that on the woods and stuff, you know?
Right. You don't have to tell me this if you don't want, and it's really irrelevant to it all, but who is Nick?
Nick is, I don't know who he is. I've never met Nick or Colby, but Nick is one of Colby and Colin's friends, and he lives on Jimtown Road by the cemetery, by the Jimtown, like, right beside the Jimtown cemetery.
Jimtown?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I don't know Nick's last name or Colby's last name.
Oh, well, that's fine. I was just wondering because that's a whole new name in this whole situation. We hadn't heard that name. But a lot of the things that you're telling me make sense.
And whether what I'm saying is if this is where they're at or not, honestly, I don't think, because if this was right, they covered it so well. Like, they're stupid, but somehow this is a really smart way, you know, to get rid of a body if you're going to get rid of a body. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, but I know I know, like, I'm 100% sure, one, that Molly's dead, and two, that it was Nick and Colby and Con, because two of my close friends are close friends with Nick. Well, one of my close friends is close friends with Nick, and then my other close friend, me and her, are close friends with this other close friend. But that makes sense. But anyway, I wasn't there, but my friend and my other friend were at my friend's house, and Nick was there, and I think Colby was there too, I'm not sure. But I guess it was on the news or something, and the thing of Molly and Colt came on the news, and they were like, you know, if you have any information, call, you know, Molly Miller, she's missing. And then Nick turned around, and apparently he didn't say it very loudly, but he said it, like, loud enough for my friend to hear. And he said, yeah, we had to take out the trash. Like, I would put it on pretty much anything that those three are the ones that did it.
So is it pretty much where this area is between Wade and Stockton?
I don't know if it, I mean...
What about Hall Road?
The person that told me is, like, he wasn't involved, but he, like, I don't know, he, like, deals drugs with them, I think, or something. I'm not involved in, like, drugs and stuff. I don't do drugs.
Right.
But, he deals drugs with them or something like that. And I guess they told him or something. I don't really know how he knows all the details, but I'm pretty sure he, like, deals drugs with them. And,
well, they were probably making jokes. They were probably all messed up. They were probably all messed up partying one night and making jokes about it.
Yeah, probably. And, what I was going to say was he wasn't there, so, like, you know, obviously, even if they are going to tell somebody, oh, yeah, this is what we did, they're not going to pinpoint it like, oh, yeah, it's over here on these latitude and longitude.
Right.
You know? And also, I don't know for sure if he knows, like, this is exact. What he told me was we were looking at, because I was trying to get information from him, like, every day, and we were looking at the computer, and I'd ask him every day, like, well, what they do with the bodies? He kept being like, I don't know, you know, like, every time I'd say something, like, I'd get a little bit more out of him.
Right.
Because I knew he knew a lot. He's smart enough to not go out his mouth because he knows Con and them, and he knows what they're capable of better than probably the rest of us do. But he did say that whether this is what they told them or not, he did say that, I don't know if he said Colby said it or Con said it, but he said that they said that if he ever needed to, like, get rid of a body, they knew where to put it. And then they told him, and, like, I don't know how long ago this was, they told him there's some old wells over there on. So I don't know if he's getting that from that or because they actually told him. Like, I didn't really get into detail with him about it.
Right.
Because I didn't want him to think I wanted to know that bad.
Right, right. Well, that's very smart of you. Very smart of you. Have you heard anyone that you've talked to mention Hull Road?
No.
Okay.
Where's that at?
Well, it's out there by Stockton somewhere. It's between Wade and Stockton. And we have heard from rumors or leads or whatever.
It's between Wade and Stockton?
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably where it's at then, because, like, where I'm going to show you, it's kind of between Wade and Stockton, but I never saw, like, on the map a full road or whatever.
Yeah, it's just a little road out there in between Stockton and Wade. That may be... Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You don't know how much I appreciate you calling me.
You're welcome.
Any more information, call me. This is a lot of information, and I appreciate it. If you get any more, you want to tell me anything...
Don't think I'm going to find anything else out. Probably, like, this is probably as far as it goes.
If we find her, you will be compensated for this. Your name will never be mentioned. We won't even have to see you, but we'll get it to you.
Okay.
But if you hear, like you said, I doubt you do hear anything else, because this is pretty much it.
Yeah, and I honestly think I, like, squeezed everything out of him that I could. I don't think he's going to. And honestly, I don't even know if he probably knows other little details, but I don't think he knows anything major else.
Right.
You know?
Well, yeah, if you could send me that picture to kind of give us an idea.
Okay. I had this, like, really weird, like, random dream. I mean, it freaked me out, but it was just really weird and random. And I had this dream that some of my friends came, and they were like, we know where Molly's at. And I was like, what? And they said, yeah, we're going to search for her. And I was like, oh, I want to go. And I was like, well, where are we going? And they said, 12 miles south of Wolf. And I was like, oh, okay. And I don't know if I just heard 12 miles south of Wilson before, or if that was just like a weird thing. But then when I woke up, I the next day or so, I went and talked to them. I was like, asking them about, like, where they might be. And because at the time, I didn't really know that they were, like, in, like, Love County. You know, I kind of thought they might be in Wilson, or they might be wherever. I wasn't sure. And then he was like, oh, and, like, I was looking at Wade Road, and I was like, oh, well, I said, look at all the trees around here. I said, they could put them around here or whatever. He said, no. He said, they are probably around Wade Road, but not that way. And I said, what? And then he said, well, scroll down. And he basically, like, scrolled me, like, he scrolled down, and then he scrolled to the side, like, over to Stockton. He said they're around there. And then I put the thing in my GPS, and to the point where he pointed to from my GPS from the center of Wilson to that point was 12.6 miles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it freaked me out. It gave me chill bumps. I was like, what the hell?
Wow.
But,
yes,
yeah,
please
anyway.
send that to us. That will help us a lot.
Well,
we just got to get her. We got to get her home one way or another. This family, my family, we've got to have closure.
Yeah.
We can't do this anymore.
If I were you, I would just deal with the OSBI. I would deal with Wilson Police.
Oh, no.
They're worth a lot.
We're over that. Yeah, we're over them.
Yeah. Because I tried to call anonymously to the police the other day, and they were just straight up rude with me. Like, they wanted to know why I would give them my name and, like, all this stuff. And they were like, well, is this just rumors, or do you actually know this? And I was just thinking, well, you know what? The poster said if you have any information, not if you know your information is 100% correct.
Right.
It just really made me mad. They were just rude, and it was like they didn't even want to talk. I wouldn't even deal with them. I would just deal with the FBI.
Was it the Wilson Police that you called?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. We're the family, and they don't listen to us, or they won't even tell us anything.
I'm going to get off here. I'll send you that picture. It's probably going to be 15 more minutes until I can stop and send it.
Okay. Believe me, I don't want anybody else's family going through this, and I don't want anybody else getting hurt over this. That I do not.
Yeah.
This is enough. This is too much. I can't express to you how grateful I am that you called me. It means so much. You don't even know. If I could see you, I'd give you the biggest hug ever.
You have to look on the ground really hard because the way he's explaining it, like even if you step on the well, you're probably not going to see it.
I'm to the point I'll crawl on my hands and knees all over that place, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Send me that picture whenever you get a chance.
And I also do know that there's, I don't know for sure there's multiple wells, but he said there's multiple wells around there. So just because if you find one well and they're not in there, like, keep looking because they could be in any of those.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get off here, and I really hope you find them.
I hope so, too, and thank you so, so much.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
The way the ball was dropped on this particular case on so many levels honestly really begs me to wonder why there were never any internal affairs investigations and or FBI investigations done on this case, considering the overwhelming circumstances that point to a lot of just foul play.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
For any tips relating to the disappearance of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, please contact 833-4-MOLLY and Colt, and they will be directed to the proper law enforcement agency.
All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.